Hello friends, welcome back to Spiritism for All, and today we continue the study of the book Behind the Scenes of Obsession. The chapter is the Soares Family, and today in this video we really start to know all the story of the Familia Soares, and it begins in a treatment in a Spiritist center of the incarnates of the family, and through the treatment and the following chapters we will understand how the problems from the past generate the problems of today, the past lives generating consequences to our lives today. And you can see the obsessions produced by the ones who were injured, who was injustice, and so on. And it's a very interesting story. Come with us in this fantastic journey. After the evangelical reading and the competent commentary woven into brief considerations, the leader of the meeting offered an expressive prayer, through which, feeling deeply moved, he asked for the help of the superior spheres for the task of the obsession. Those works were part of the aid program that Brother José Petitinga had been passionate about for 2 decades. In the sanctuary where fraternal labors were carried out, the odor of charity always permeated the suffering on both sides of life, incarnated and discarnated ones, who arrived there in anguish and affliction. Through psychophony, the benefactor Saturnino offered the words of counseling confidence with which he usually traced the first directives at the opening of the session, attesting the efficient concurrence of the workers of spirituality, and addressing to Sister Amalia, pulled her out the painful thoughts that constrained her. Experiencing a singular bitterness, the young woman's face was furrowed with pain, showing her singularly slaughtered spirit. Through affectionate and encouraging expressions, the spiritual instructor clarified that the visit of a persecutor had been scheduled for that night, linked by the criminal past to the Soares family, represented there at that moment by the moved girl. Since the day before, he explained solicitously, help had been provided to Mariana, more intimately attuned to the visitor, who would soon use psychophony mediumship, although tormented, in view of the circumstances of the ongoing drama, which could collide in an irremediable tragedy. To substantiate the work of the night, he continued gently. The titles of love gained by Amalia and her mother among the spiritual leaders of the house were taken into account. The house is the Spiritist center, where José Petitinga and Manoel Philomeno worked. In truth, Dona Rosa had long experienced a heavy burden of nameless afflictions, which slowly crushed her, At a very young age she had married a tormented young man who, unvigilant and careless of the noble duties of the family, remained psychically linked to vigorous discarnate assassins who pursued him relentlessly. Merciless spiritual enemies seduced him since an early age, leading him into unbridled gambling, premeditating one day murdering him through a police raid in the den where he took refuge to cultivate his harmful addiction with other no less tormented partners, program that was in progress. Despite the financial difficulties to which he was tied, as the parent of 6 children in need of assistance and better guidance, he let himself stay carelessly nights on end between the expectation of an imaginative and illicit profit and the prospect of an impossible and dishonest fortune. While the resources from his modest retirement dwindled, he made no effort to complete the few coins with extra expedients or exercising another profession. The imbalance of Mr. Mateus had manifested itself since a very early age, in the middle of his youth. However, with the rebirth of Mariana in the condition of his daughter, a strange memory, as if it had unleashed half-erased reminiscences that warmed him relentlessly, making the atmosphere of the home unbreathable in the brief periods of time he spent there, getting worse as the girl grew up, and which at times culminated in death and reciprocal hatred, exploding with increasing frequency in unfortunate threats that reached to serious faults on both sides. Enthusiastic and humble, they participated in the service of aid to the discarnate at the União Espírita Baiana under the affectionate direction of their brother Pichitinga, who also raised their afflictions with generous and Christian hands. That night, however, Dona Rosa had been forced to stay at home, crucified by superlative agony, awaiting the return of Mariana, who, after regrettable friction with her obsessed father, had escaped, rebellious among sour threats and unjustified attitudes, abandoning the domestic heat, disfigured by hatred and folly, though still being a 16-year-old girl. So she left home after a quarrel with her father. Praying and having left her pains in the hands of Lord, the mother had stayed at home, while Amelia had run, suffering and worried, to the service of charity, choking her own tears, overcome by incoercible omens. The Spiritist temple of communion with the high spirits was her sphere of light, blessed bastion of comfort in which she drew energy to proceed through the hot ordeals, although necessary for her own refinement. After doing the clarifying preamble through slight notes, the instructor asked for the necessary concentration disconnecting himself from the medium Moraes, through whose psychophonic faculty the unfortunate family persecutor should communicate. Moraes was a dedicated somnambulist psychophonic medium who offered himself with expressive affection to help the discarnate. He combined with well-disciplined mediumship an excellent disposition to the work of charity among the tormented of the earth. He had learned from the spiritual benefactors that the most efficient way to improve mediumistic faculties is still the constant exercise of moral qualities through the practice of indiscriminate and incessant good. Thus he had educated himself in discretion in the face of difficulties of others, and had become a great collaborator for many beings who had fallen in the fights of life. That's why there were in him the indispensable requirements for the healthy exercise of mediumship, especially when Saturnino brought unhappy or perverse entities to the disobsession counseling meetings. With his face transfigured into a mask of agonizing grimaces, the medium incorporated an atrocious being who, among blasphemies and vulgar expressions, reproached the commitment of bringing him there against his will. So the entity says, "I will do justice," he claimed, fuming. "Justice will come out of my own hands. As a Jew, I have been traveling without rest after being betrayed to sip that immense and endless cup of gall and feces that poisons me without annihilating me." Affectionately involved by the floods of Saturnino, the counseling medium, particularly moved, addressed to the communicator, telling him about renunciation and forgiveness as basis for building happiness. Hatred, asserted Pichitinga kindly, ends up conquering those who cultivate it. Lethal toxic that has its source in the rebellion that vitalizes it until love, in the way that Jesus lived it, extinguishes its source. Love is the cure for hatred. "I'll never forgive," he exploded in an embarrassing horror. Forgiveness is an unspeakable weakness for those who found in revenge the only reason to exist. The simple idea of forgiveness is like a lightning bolt that burns. I'll never forgive, even if by destroying I may be destroyed. "No, my brother," retorted paused the inspired counseling medium. "Nothing ends. Life doesn't stop. A cycle ends in one bend of evolution to reappear in another, continuing to develop beyond. Destruction is a way to change the appearance of one body to be reborn in another. Although ignoring your reasons, which, however, do not justify your state of unhappiness, distributing resentment and slaughtering with vindictive tongues, those who are under the command of your deranged mind will encourage you to remind of compassion." So the counseling medium is trying to show the entity that hatred is not only causing harm to the incarnated one, the incarnated family, but is destroying him as a spirit. Let's proceed. Remember those who will be victims of your madness when wishing to hurt your enemy will also, in your turn, hurt the feelings of those who love your former offender. Are you not moved by tears, endless vigils of a mother's life torn apart by painful expectations? Have you placed the fiery furnace in your chest in place of a heart made to love? Love, he refuted congested. It's poetry for those who are delighted with the illusions of the body. Hatred, however, consider the counseling medium, is a cloud that shades the vision of the reality, making it dark. Clownish phantom dulls the highest aspirations of the human spirit, leading him to the dark and endless corridors of madness without peace or light. Only love pours sun into souls, penetrating beings with hope. Try to love, and right away we will find your own pain lessening. To love? Exclaimed hallucinated. Love? How to love if I can never forgive, since I'll never be able to forget all the harm done to me by the soulless traitors whose memory I abjure? The pain that crunched me made me lose track of time and of the reality of life. My life became only an endless search of those who blasted me, merciless, without having destroyed me, which would have been a blessing in relation to what I suffer, is the claim of the obsessor. Surely they forgot, yes. I, however, never forgot. I'll never forget, since that both of them joined together to annihilate me, which they certainly failed. My life has been forever shattered. Death, which I expected to be a relief, when I tried to escape with my spirit trampled with shame and pain through nefarious suicide, instead of disintegrate my conscience, it just activated it more. So the obsessor was so aggressed by the ones that are now incarnated that he committed suicide. That's why he's so injured. I have been crying. I have been crying, and while I cry, the weeping turns to molten scalding steel, tearing my face. When I screamed, my voice was received by 1,000 beings who pursued me with unspeakable sorrows and mockery, and the pain that was tearing me apart was added the bitter pain of the torment I had imposed to myself trying to escape through suicide. I died without dying. This description of the obsessor is very important because it shows exactly how a suicidal feels. Because when someone commits suicide, he tries to finish his life due to his pain, how much he is hurt. He wants to finish, to end all the problems, finishing himself. But the problem with suicide is exactly this, because It sums to all your problems, all your sufferings that for you justify your suicide. It sums the suicidal consequences. You don't die. You just kill your body. But you have the problems. You, as immortal soul, is the one who suffers, not the body. So you discover that you kill the body, but you don't kill yourself. You don't diminish your problems that caused your suicide. And to all your problems that made you crazy, of suffer, are added lots of ones. Because due to your suicide, you will be seeing over and over again the final scene where you kill yourself. The other ones will mock of you, will aggress you, make aggressions to you. The vital energy that still exists in you, your ectoplasm, your vital fluid, will be vampirized by other spirits, and you suffer all of this. So it's a tragedy. Suicide is a tragedy. And while the poison penetrated the recesses of my spirit, buffeted by 1,000 pains, they, my executioners, enjoyed their youth, as if I were led by gutless goblins. I was dragged in mad desperation towards them, in order to see them, accompany them, hear them, and I threw myself at them, both, and cried out my infinite misery, but their ears didn't hear me. Oh, I'll never be able to forget, forgive, love, never, never. Never forgive, never forget. A phrase that lots of people say and don't understand how much harm this state of mind can cause to them and to others. Brother Saturnino, mediumistic involving the venerable counsely benefactor, lifted him up, and addressing to the disturbed in prayer, began to apply healing blessings on him, in order to reduce his most acute spiritual ulcerations and tortures. Mild light surrounded the communicator, while Saturnino's hands, juxtaposed to Petitinga's hands, as deposits of radiant energy, which also came out from the cardiac plexus of Petitinga, the incarnated medium, slowly penetrated the perispirit of the discarnate, anesthetizing his spiritual organization in disarray. So the healing blessings provided by the medium Petitinga and the spirit Saturnino began to anesthetize and cure the perispirit of the obsessor. Continuing with the orientation work, after treating other discarnate sufferers, just before the end of the meeting, the spiritual benefactor sent a message through a psychophonic medium, clarifying that, thanks to the Lord's blessings, during that night, the first stage of the Soares Family Assistance Program had been crowned with success. So here the communication was ended. The spirit, the obsessor spirit, was treated in his perispirit, and the spiritual benefactor Saturnino sent a message to the family explaining that that was the first step. That spirit was treated, that would be taken to a spiritual hospital for treatment continuity, but we'll see that lots of spirits will still be treated in order to help the family. So he urged everyone to pray intercessory petitions for the benefit of those involved in that process, promising to return to the problem at the next opportunity. After the Thanksgiving prayer, the meeting was finished. In next chapter, we will continue the study of the book with the chapter The Spiritual Help. Thank you very much for watching us, and if you like this video, please subscribe to the channel, leave us your like, and share this video and the book with all your friends and colleagues.